This week on Behind Podcast, we talk. This week on Behind Podcast, we're covering off on questions sent in by one of our viewers/listeners. Thank you very much. We appreciate the support. About wine lists and where do you start and where do you stop? Hello, TK.
Hey.
How are you?
Outstanding. How are you, mate?
I'm wonderful. It's Masters Week. Rory won. That's all I need.
I know, it was happy. It was a happy moment.
My life can go on.
Happened to see Greg Norman sitting in Kitty Gosha. Yeah, just saying.
That's good.
Yeah.
Did you tell him that Rory's got 2 more wins than him?
Maybe Cam Smith is shouting out from the rooftops how fucking good the ramen is there.
Yeah, exactly. He should.
I was literally sitting at Market Bistro and I went,
That's Greg Norman.
The fucking shark just walked past.
Was
and
it
the
just
guys I was with were like, what? And I'm like, yeah, I'm sure it was. And sure enough, he was in
just having a bowl?
of ramen.
That's cool.
Glass of water out of the water fountain.
Were you professional or did you go up and...
Yeah, I was professional. Didn't go up. I wanted to so bad.
I didn't go up.
You send someone up.
No.
Actually, that's an interesting
He
one
was
to
there
talk
for the
about.
Olympic Committee meeting over at the City Hall.
That's an interesting topic at some point in time we should mention is about famous people in restaurants. And
Yeah,
the
I think everybody asks about it.
Yeah, certainly I get that all the time, like who have you looked after? And there's certain things
You've
like,
had some crack.
I have, but there's also things that you just can't talk
Yeah,
about as well.
of course.
But,
and, you know, what does it really matter? It's kind of nice. We have a few in particular that come into the restaurants that, we just keep it on.
Basically
on
ignore
the
them.
low
You know,
low.
it's just like just a regular person.
Yeah.
A lot of, certainly my experience is a lot of them, people that are in that situation when they get recognised in public, they actually don't mind it when you just play normal.
Yeah, because they have enough people
They
coming.
get
up
it
with
everywhere
us.
else. Yeah,
Thanks,
exactly
guys.
right. So Corey, you flipped this you flipped us on our head today. We're going to taste something before we get started.
Yeah, absolutely. It felt like a waste putting it towards the end. So today,
Do you think
is
we're going
different.
to get a little bit more social lubricant and be able to speak a
that's
little
it. We're going to
bit
grease the wheels, as I put it earlier.
All right, so we're going to drink
With 50 ml.
Sorry, taste.
All of
Should have
us
done a little
there.
ASMR with that. I didn't get that right. We're going to taste some rosé today. So this is Dominic Porte rosé.
Did you ever in your wildest dreams think that rosé was going to go bunter like it has done in the last few years?
Yeah.
Did you?
At Restaurant 2, at one point in time, we had 500 wines on the list. I think I've told this story, and we originally had like 4 rosés maybe, and we sold like 1 in 3 years. And I was like, we need to be selling more of this. And I was really, so I think I ended up building it to like 10. And the same thing, we probably sold like 5.
Dave
a
Pugh still
year.
got the 10.
They're still there, probably. No, they're definitely not. But look, yes and no, I suppose. There was a lot of resistance to rosé based on history in this country in particular. When we had these like thermonuclear pink things that look like they just come out of a candy store, and they would tend to be made with a little bit more sugar. So there was this hangover, similar to Riesling, I suppose, that historical styles of wine still affect what people think they are today, even though they're not like that anymore.
Sure.
There's almost this generational sort of handing down of information somehow that, if it's pink and it looks like that, it's going to be sweet, which is just not true.
Not true.
And in this country, we're really fortunate that a lot of producers have really jumped on that pale, dry, savoury sort of train, which is what rosé should be. Doesn't have to be. Obviously, it can be many, many things, but I certainly prefer it in that pale, dry, and savoury thing. This is exactly what this is. I mean, Dom Porte is one of the great producers of rosé in this country. He makes stunning wines all up in the Yarra Valley. Love their sparkling wine. Some great Pinot. Got some great Shiraz out of Heathcote as well, and beautiful Cabernet from the Yarra, but really good value for money wines. But what I always like about this wine, I haven't seen this vintage before, but generally you look at that, it's got that sort of Allen's strawberries and cream kind of nose where it's that sort of really bright sort of cherry character to it, or those red berries, whatever you want to call them, forest berries, and then it's always generally dry and savoury. It's smashable. That's generally what is it? How
Delicious.
How have I described it? Is it
Absolutely.
close?
Hang on. One of the things that I'll say is there's so much good rosé produced in Australia. Right? Well, that's a good sound, isn't it? It's fairly young.
Strange underwater fountain.
Strange underwater fountain.
Please explain.
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the reasons why, and why I said yes when you asked me that question initially, is that there is nowhere on the planet that's better suited to drinking rosé than Queensland. I don't think. Maybe the south of France, but that's pretty much, our lifestyle is designed for this.
Yep.
The middle of the day, you don't really want to be necking Shiraz.
No.
So, but you might want something just a little bit richer than white wine. So this is kind of that gateway drug to get you into the reds, that sort of in the middle, but it suits so many things as well. Like you think like the back deck, a charcuterie board, something simple, some cheese. This is just going to be fun and easy. You don't have to think about it.
Yep.
What I like about
To handle spice well.
yeah, it can. It depends on the spice as well. But what you got to be careful with rosé in particular and spice is just if it's fresh dried, or super technical sort of stuff. But for me, rosé can handle a little bit of heat, but not too much.
Somebody was telling me the other day that they love pairing Indian food with rosé, and I thought that was interesting.
Yeah.
But I suppose there's such a broad spectrum of Indian food as well.
And there's a broad spectrum of rosé as well. That's the other
right.
thing. So, when you've got something that it maybe does have a little bit more sugar.
Yep.
And depending on the Indian as well. I mean, Indian food is, depending on where you are, so regionally specific that some things just won't work. Something that's kind of maybe too, like peanutty for me probably won't work too much. Something at the lighter end, yeah, absolutely. I would understand that. I still think the two best things to match with like a classic sort of curry of some kind are generally beer and surprisingly really fruit-driven styles of red wine.
Yeah, right.
So like young, unoaked Barossa Grenache, for example, can be killer with that sort of like not too hot.
Yeah.
But things like Madras and, something that is a bit rich where you need a little bit more weight.
Yeah.
You're not going to get that in white wine.
I reckon just drinking that and smelling that crumbed prawns would be fucking delicious with it, I reckon.
Yeah, absolutely. Because it has the acid, so it's going to cut through the fat.
Yeah.
And that's the thing. It's like, and we talk about this and I'll continue to talk about this until the end of time. It's never just about the prawn. It's
the sauce,
it's everything else around it. That's the thing. Is if you get a prawn, then you crumb it. It's like that's a whole other thing. And crumbing generally improves most things.
It's like confident.
Yeah, exactly. Right. I just want to cook it in fat. Okay, no problems at all. So yeah, lovely to wine. I can't remember off the top of my head retail wise. I think this is about $30, maybe 20, somewhere between 25 and $30. But
marketwinestore.com.au.
no free ads. Well, we know that we've got the sponsor for this.
Sponsored by
Corey. Can you do up that invoice? And then, I mean, Ben, who's now taking over the winery from his dad, Dominic's still very, very heavily involved. Don't get me wrong, but
how long's the vineyard been around for?
I think the vineyard was probably planted early '80s, and then it's continued to plant out as they've sort of grown and needed more things. But it's just it's just easy.
Yeah,
I think that's the thing for rosé shouldn't be complicated. Even the great rosés of the world, from Bandol or from Provence, where they can only get to a certain point.
Yeah.
You're probably not gonna write a novel about a bottle of rosé at all. But you'll probably enjoy reading a novel while you're smashing a bottle of rosé. So, and again, it's not that they're not serious. They can be super serious, but there's just, for me, this is how they should just.
And I just think they're such terrific value for money.
Absolutely.
That's a great to go over for a barbecue if you're a wine lover and to be able to grab a bottle of wine for between $20 and $30.
And you're also gonna keep a lot of people happy with that. You're not going to offend anyone.
No.
I remember years ago. This would have been probably 15, maybe 20 years ago. I went to a party and I took a bottle of rosé, which at that point in time was a very bold move. Everyone else is taking 6-packs.
Yeah. And
I took a bottle of rosé and it was the first thing to go.
Really?
Yeah. And it was everyone was drinking it.
No way.
Which is great. I love that. So cheers to Dom Porte and well done, Ben, making another delicious little rosé.
Wine.
So
well done.
All right, we'll put him in the back. What else are we talking about? Is that it? Is that the episode done?
That's it, mate. You're done.
Oh, you got to turn your mic on. The producer can't even turn his own mic on. Yeah, go for it. What do we got? We got some.
This is actually a perfect segue.
Is it?
Yeah. So we had a listener write in with some requests for episodes.
Cool.
So now we're going to respond to that. So this is verbatim from the email.
Oh.
What gets included, excluded to make a minimal but solid wine list? Price points, varietals, regions, overall number of wines, number of pages, even font size you choose for older demographics. Pricing per glass bottle or relative to wholesale as bottle prices increase.
Oh, that's a long one.
Holy smokes! There's a lot in that. Why don't we?
So I imagine building wine lists for a multitude of demographics and dealing with the price. Actually, let's just pick it apart.
Let's just go one by one.
Let's go on.
Yeah, okay. So let's start with the first one. So it was about picking
What's included / excluded to make a minimal but solid wine list.
Can I intervene there and just say I think that you should encompass the restaurant as a whole first and go, where's the restaurant? What do you want to be famous for? Where is it at? Like all these things that before you even start with the wine list are so important.
Yeah.
And what you start with and what you finish with potentially is going to be so fucking different.
Totally.
Right? I don't think. Well, it's never happened with me where what we started with and what we've finished with, or even halfway down the journey, take any one of our restaurants now, that's so different.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's a big question and it's a broad question. And I think that's the whole idea. Like, when I was consulting and you'd meet with someone, the first question is, well, tell me about the restaurant.
Yeah.
Like, tell me about the venue first, because I'm writing, this is me, this is the way that I do things, it's not the way that everyone does. But when I'm writing a wine list, particularly from scratch, it's about trying to capture that essence of that restaurant or the personality of that restaurant in the list.
And I think it's important, sorry to cut you off, that this is the way you do it and it's worked. It doesn't mean it's the right way, but it's the way that you've proven that works very well for you, right?
Yeah.
Because I get people go, that's not the way you do it. It's the way that you do it, and it's the way that has worked, and you've proven that fact, right?
Absolutely. And I think that, again, it depends on what you're trying to do. Like if you want to have a commercially viable wine list, it may look very different to a wine list that has been written by someone who really likes certain styles of wines. So the first thing I would do is, you've almost got to take your own hat off and go, right, who are we?
Do you remember Paul McGivern's wine
Repeat.
list?
No, repeat. Oh, no, was it Manx?
Manx.
It was all Pinot. It was just like, it was impressive. And that's what I've talked about, like Paul Greco's place in Terroir in New York, when it was Eville. When Eville was first opened, I think there was 14 pages of Riesling, and that was the entire wine list. And people came and going, what are you doing? It's like, that's what we're doing. If you don't like it, fuck off.
Well, people have a crack at us at Rice Boy about the fact that we've got one white wine.
Yeah.
We've got one rosé. We've got two red wines. Like, it's not what we do.
Yeah.
But that's what we've got. You want a white?
There it is.
Yes, Sauvignon Blanc.
Yeah. Or there's beer.
Yeah.
Or there's spirits, or there's cocktails, or there's everything else.
The reason for that is because when we opened that restaurant, we wanted to be famous for beer and dumplings, or beer and curry.
Yeah.
So everything was geared towards that.
Yeah.
So, and speed.
So the wine became an ancillary sort of
So
part
you weren't going to be flicking through a wine list at the front counter. And when you get to the front counter, it's like, I'd like a glass of
You need to go now.
We've got this one. Bang.
Yeah, exactly. And so that's the thing. For that venue, it works.
Yeah.
In terms of small wine lists, and the question's right about small wine lists, they are the hardest lists to write. And when I say small, that could be 10, it can be 20, it can be 50, it can be 100. Like those 100 wines for me is kind of we're working on a new project right now, and I'm actually having a meeting tomorrow about the direction of everything about the venue, so that I can then start really locking in the wine list. We've got a draft menu.
I was going to say, can you create a wine list without a menu, or is it just harder?
If you can, but it won't work.
You're probably going to end up making
correct. It'll have to adjust
50% of a change. Yeah.
Depending on what it is. Again, like I've written wine lists for small venues where it's 10 wines. And it's like, well, we're sort of just stripping everything out.
Drink
so
list. How
do you strip everything back into a list of wines, trying to cover as much as you can with 10? I kind of work on the fact there's certain things you need. You need sparkling, okay? You need white, you need pink, you need red. Now, around that, you could also argue that you probably need something skin contact, and you probably need something sweet.
What do you mean by skin contact?
So a white wine that's made like a red wine, so it becomes what we call an amber color, or an amber style, or a skin contact wine. Which
is getting a bit more trendy now.
Way more trendy. Yeah, it's kind of an interesting sort of phase. It's like, because the people that sort of started drinking skinsy wines probably 5 years ago now, their evolution of their palates are changing, so they're not having maybe as much of those as they used to, but there's still plenty of people drinking them, and they're really interesting styles of wine. So if you look at that's what have I just said? That's sparkling, white, amber, pink, red, sweet. That's 6. So we've got 4 other things to play with. And in that white, like the white and pink, they're easy. Sorry, pink is easy because it doesn't really matter what the variety is. No one's going to go, oh, what grape variety does that rose?
They're just going to ask
like,
you
I don't
if
care.
it's dry or sweet.
Correct. And so then you've got one white wine. So let's say, okay, we're going to have 3 white wines and 3 red wines. That's going to round out everything. Well, what does that look like? Okay, so you need light, medium, and full. And so you're going to need a Sauvignon Blanc. You're going to need a Pinot Gris or a Pinot Grigio. You're going to need a Chardonnay. So that's why it's done. Reds, you're going to need a Pinot Noir. You're going to need a Shiraz, and you're going to need something else. Generally, we sit in the middle with something like a Grenache or a blend of some kind. So that's it. There's your 10-bottle wine list written in 3 minutes.
That sounds like the rice boy wine list.
Yeah, it's not.
Except there's one of
each. It's actually bigger. Yeah. So I think for me, I sort of start with that for a small list and then start fleshing it out. So it's like, okay, well then we've got a couple more spots for white. So it's like we need a Riesling, we need a this, we need a few things like that. We need something a little bit more textural, like a Rhone varietal wine, like a Marsanne, Roussanne, Viognier. The red, same thing. So we build the bones, and this is how I write any wine list. So most people write any wine list. They start with the either the variety or the style, and then they start fleshing out into producers and vintages and everything else. But we basically build the bones, and then we put all accoutrement on. So basically,
Good word.
good one, isn't it? Hey, Corey's gonna have to look that one up. I don't actually know what it means, but that's how I start. So small, and then flesh it out. What was the next question, Corey? After the what to leave in and what to leave out?
Is it harder to create a small list?
Impossibly harder.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, because you've got everything has to earn its spot. Everything has to be killer.
Yeah.
It's that all killer, no filler kind of thing, which is, we used that when we were at Central last year. That was kind of the reason for everything. It's like all killer, no filler. Everything's got to be good. Everything's got to make sense on the list.
And you got some pretty out there wines on there, right?
Yes and no. It's not too bad. I think we've got a good balance in there. The out there probably comes from things like China in particular, where people like and don't understand what that is. But again, we've got a team in there that can help with all of that thing.
Yeah.
So
it's a great place to go and have a bit of fun.
Yeah, totally. I mean, that's the thing. Great restaurants, if they've got great wine teams, you can just have fun.
Yeah.
It's just like, let them guide you, let them take you to these sort of cool places. So, but yeah, small is hard. But that's where everything sort of starts. And I'd much prefer to open a restaurant with a small list and grow it as needs be, as opposed to opening a restaurant with no idea, with, let's say, 500 bottle wine list, and then spending the next 2 years culling that down to 100.
If you did some consulting for a cafe that wanted that 10-bottle, 15-bottle list, what I used to do is I would say to the owner of the restaurant, make somebody the champion of that list. You don't need a sommelier. It can be young Billy, but let him try all the wines and spend some time with the reps and get him to understand it the best way for himself. He doesn't need to know what the malolactic fermentation of Chardonnay is, but he needs to know, is it sweet, is it dry, is it...
Absolutely, simplify it.
And know those 10 wines, so when somebody asks, he can go, this is my favourite. Or even if it's 2 people.
And the thing is, with 10 wines, if you don't know what they are...
Yeah, you're just not trying hard enough.
Exactly right. There's restaurants with 1,000-bottle wine lists, and there's people in those venues that know every single bottle.
Because I've said to owners of restaurants when I've done the consulting, we'll crack open the 10 and let's get everybody around the table. And the look on their face was like, you want me to open 10 bottles of wine? It's like, how the fuck else are you going to educate your staff?
Absolutely. And the thing is, I mean, the companies that you're buying these wines from, they are happy to support with that product because they know if your staff know what it is,
they just want to sell more piss. That's what I mean. Like, I can't believe it.
And I think that's probably a big tip, but I would always lean on your suppliers as much as possible. If you can find a couple of great suppliers, even for a small list, I mean, you probably only need one for a 10-bottle wine list, but if you can get a wholesaler who's got, or agency that's got a few brands, so it's not just 10 wines from the same producer or the same region or the same vintage, but someone that's got multiple brands, and you can sort of put a cool little wine together and ask for their help. They're obviously they're going to help you because they're selling your wine. So it's not like, oh my god, these people are really lovely. It's like, no, that's their job.
You listen to comments like you're just making then, and one way or another, it all kind of swings back to my ethos of quality product, number one, service and support through your suppliers, number two, and then the value. It just needs to be market. Not the most expensive, not the cheapest, just value. And I think that, your suppliers are really going to help you with that. If you've got the best suppliers, you're going to go so much further to winning this fucking vicious game.
Absolutely. And the suppliers, they will help with everything. It's like, even with pricing, if you're not sure, just go, hey, we're thinking about this. What do you think? And the supplier's like, oof, that's a bit rich, or, that's
or they might say,
a bit under. Or
Billy down the road's put that wine on and they haven't sold one bottle in 3 years. So why don't you go down this
try something else? Exactly.
It doesn't need to be the same brand as what they're selling, but the same style.
And I'm very honest with any suppliers that we deal with. If I need something, I'll ask for them. I always say to them, if you need something, ask me. So, but that's one of the big things for me is particularly knowing what's around, what's in the area.
Yep.
Because, particularly with a couple of our restaurants where you're surrounded by lots and lots of restaurants, like I don't want to have the same wines as everyone else.
There's no point.
I also don't have the time to go and look at everyone else's wine list. So if I'm tasting a wine, if you're putting a wine in front of me, there's a part of me that's assuming that you're doing that because you know it's not everywhere else. So, and if it's not, you need to tell me, basically. I think that's just a polite thing to do more than anything else.
How do you get around the cost? Like one of the questions was about the cost of the wine, wasn't it? Like how do you price it?
Yeah, so sorry, I did word the question terribly. So the actual question is, what gets included, excluded to make a minimal but solid wine list?
Well, I think
that's the question.
okay.
Yeah. So you definitely covered that.
Okay, good.
And then in brackets, they had everything else I listed.
Well, let's go through one by one.
So you've pretty much covered everything from price points, varietals, regions, overall number of wines. This kind of comes down to menu, doesn't it? And the size of venue.
It comes down to the venue, the personality of the venue. Like I've seen there's a couple of places. Was there a place in Far North Queensland? I can't remember what it's called. Oh my God. But it had this 1,000-bottle wine list, and it was, a Chinese restaurant. And you're sort of going, what's the story here? But the people that own it were just so into wine that it just became...
It's their own personal cellar.
100%.
Yeah.
But it was so cool because you go in there and they would attract people because the wine list was so good. So they almost did the reverse. They're like, no, we're going to build this incredible list and people will come to eat, and then we'll just also sell them some ridiculous wines. They've got an incredible collection of wines.
I've got a picture of...
Sorry, you go.
I've got a picture of Rebecca Grisman, a friend of the restaurants and Melissa and I personally. She's turned into this massive champagne freak.
Yep.
She's good mates with Bernadette.
Yeah.
And when we first opened Hello Harry, I thought, I had a bit of wine at home. I'm going to bring in a dozen bottles and just have a little secret list. If any of my mates want to come in and have a burger and eat and drink something really cool, we'll be able to rip out this wine list. Got a picture of Rebecca Grisman went out to a function. She had 10 models with her and they ordered burgers each and a bottle of 96 Krug.
Perfect. That's like a perfect Tuesday night.
It's like,
wow,
how fucking cool is that?
That's fun.
Yeah.
But again, that's, you're in a tiny little restaurant. You just happen to have those things.
Smashing
there,
a burger,
perfect.
drinking great champagne.
Yeah,
cool.
That sounds wonderful.
Yeah.
I did ABC Radio last week and we were talking about potato chips and wine matching. So it was actually pretty funny. It was very funny. Kat was very surprised. I think she went home and immediately had hot chips and champagne, which I recommended highly.
Did you see David Chang at the Masters this week going through the sandwich selection?
Oh, really? Or reviewing them? Or
and combining the egg salad with
the pimento cheese and
pimento cheese with the pulled pork he was like, because he thought it was like the fucking greatest canteen.
It's $2.50. The concessions
hasn't
there
changed
are just
for
unbelievably cheap.
20-something years.
It's frustrating, to be honest.
Still does 70 million a day.
Yeah, exactly. That's the thing. The merch there is like... Anyway, we digress. Not a golf podcast.
Sorry, Corey.
Yet.
When you say David Chang, you're talking Chef David?
Yeah.
David Chang? Yeah, right.
All lines up with the same people.
Yeah, exactly.
The next part of the question is...
Do we cover everything there?
You did.
Okay.
You did. Well,
how do you get the sell price by? Was that?
Yeah.
That's exactly what I was about to lead into, yeah.
That's an interesting
yeah, it is. And it comes out of the restaurant. And there's a reference there to for more expensive wines. There is a sliding scale. It's not, and when I say scale, it's not like, well, if it costs this, then you just times it by X, Y, Z, and then that's your number. That'd be great. That'd be really perfect if it was, but it's never that simple. So each venue is going to have its own specific targets for cost of goods. So cost of goods sold or COGS for beverage, generally you want to run it, depending on the venue, somewhere between 20 and 30%. But most of them are going to land at the higher end of that. So generally speaking, and there's different ways you can play with your beverage list to get to that sort of...
Especially regionally. You can't get sub 30 regionally. I haven't been able to do that.
Yeah, and that's the thing. It's like there's certain things you just can and can't do. But
27, 28% maybe.
Yeah,
but
yeah.
Remember the days when you get the glass price to cover the bottle?
Yeah.
The first glass to cover the bottle.
Yeah, which is that's what happens when you go to an airport.
Yeah, now it does.
That's always
well,
been
the first beer covers the slab.
Yeah, exactly. But I'm kind of joking about that. But that was I used to sell to Brisbane Airport, and that was their MO.
Yeah,
Basically,
right.
it was like, how much does it cost? It's like, it's $11 a bottle. It's like, okay, cool, so it's $11 a glass. I'm like, no, a bottle. And they're like, no, we'll charge $11 a glass. And at that point in time, I was like, huh, because you're looking at huge markups there. But the thing is, they only
So you
get
got
one
it wrong.
glass.
You're selling Burgundy not for $300 a glass.
Exactly. But so it's not a simple equation, because there's, at the lower end, you're generally at higher margin. At the higher end, you're at lower margin. So there's that question. And I know there's thousands of papers that have been written about this, about banking dollars, not percentages. And I think Dennis Horgan, one of the owner of and founder of Lewin Estate, he was an accountant, and he I remember reading a huge sort of article that he did about this, and the fact that he doesn't go to Commonwealth Bank on a Monday morning with 26%. He goes with a dollar amount. So that's what gets transferred in. So that's what you got to really look at.
But I will say the percentages gives you something to govern.
Correct. Exactly. You've got to have a starting point.
And you need to. Restaurants for years and years have been the stomping ground of people fleecing the owners. So unless you've got a mark that you can govern the beverage list off, it's dangerous territory.
Absolutely. And I think that, and we've all been to that restaurant where you see something like, holy shit. And particularly when you've got these days, we're all on mailing lists. We all see the retailers. We know what everyone's doing from pricing wise. So if you've got a brand that everyone sort of recognizes, and you see it in a bottle shop for $25, you see it in a restaurant for $90, that's going to have an impact on how much you sell it. And there's people will just be like, I'm not paying that for that.
Yeah.
So it's like, then I wouldn't list it.
But isn't it a double-edged sword as well that there's so many people out there that if they're nervous and they don't recognize something on the wine list or they haven't heard of it, they'll avoid it like the plague because they don't want to look like a dickhead or misfire.
Yeah.
So, I know it's a minefield.
And I always go back to, it's just like, ask the staff.
Yeah.
And, if they don't know, then there's a different conversation to be had about what kind of a venue, I suppose, that you want. Is wine the focus?
Yeah.
But I'd always say have a couple of expensive things on there, because you don't know, someone might have just won the lotto, had a win at the races, whatever. So they could just walk in and go, just put something on. So does that cover margins there? I think it does. I hope it does.
I believe so. And then the last part is menu design. What
layout
it physically looks like
and
should not look like.
I've actually, where was that today? Yeah, I was looking at LinkedIn today. There was a post there about what a wine shouldn't look like. Just search that on LinkedIn. I'm sure you'll find it. But this one was small. It had spelling mistakes. There was no vintages on it. There was no regions on it. There was some of the wines didn't have the actual producer. That just had like Merlot written on it. And then the prices. So that's what not to do. In terms of layout, I think the thing for me with layout is keeping it as simple as possible, because you want people to be able to read it quickly and make a decision quickly. We all know when you go to those restaurants that you get given a tome, or someone drives up to the table with that, we talked about before, that a lot of people will get nervous with that.
Yep.
And so they do default to then something they know. And it's like, I'll just have that. And then the restaurant knows that. So that wine, more than likely, probably has a fuck you tax on it.
Yeah.
Where it's like, it's just going to default, so we'll sell heaps of it. Let's make heaps of margin on it. So for me, I think that clear information, I tend to format everything in Excel or Google Sheets, whatever the hell it is, in a spreadsheeting software.
Sorry to cut you off. Just back to that fuck you tax. How much is that usually?
That just depends on the bottle.
Yeah, right.
Depends on the wine.
Say if it's like a bottle of
restaurant.
Pepper Jacks or something like that.
Let's try something. Let's not use an actual brand, because I'm going to offend someone.
Well, I only say Pepper Jacks because I enjoy it.
So let's say something, and you're not on your own. There's a lot of people like that.
Delicious.
Let's say something costs you $10, but you hate it, but you have to sell it. And there's a lot of somms out there that's what they do. They'll be like, I don't want to sell this, I'm going to put extra on it. So they might go $10. You know what? We'll sell it for $70. And it's like, that's ridiculous margin. That doesn't make sense. That's not selling it for what you have to. That's selling it for what you think you can.
A lot of the islands do that just purely because they've got no choice, right?
Well, it's like you look at certain, again, big brand wines, and it's like, our good friends at Rockford, my team, who are absolutely amazing. And, I know that they look after market really well, and they're very good with me. But you see those wines, like Basket Press, for example.
They could sell it for 3 times the price and still sell all of it.
It's like 10 times.
Yep.
So I think... What was it? Someone was telling me, I don't know what island it was, I'm not going to quote anything. It was an island off the Queensland coast, and Rockford Basket Press, which probably in a restaurant, I don't know.
We sell it for $350.
Yeah, sure. This is like $650, $700. You know, it's just like, what are we doing? And
I reckon they'd sell it too.
they probably do. And that's the thing. But for me, it's like, I don't want to sell one. I want to sell 2 or 3. So I will always work on a slightly lower margin at that higher end so that I can get someone to buy a second bottle.
And you're still banking fucking $300
For doing this.
That's what I mean.
It's not exactly, you know, rocket science. So it just depends. But yeah, the fuck you tax does happen a bit. It's something that I would always be mindful of it. And it's always going to happen at the lower end. So yeah, you and your savvy mates, you're in trouble.
I love
Savion Blanc's got it written all over it, doesn't it?
But yeah, the design is that I normally format everything in a spreadsheet, so then it's really clear for me. And then depending on the venue, again, it's like you know, with one of our venues that we opened last year, Central, our designer Isabel did an amazing job at really capturing the essence of the venue. You know, it's a subterranean dumpling bar a la Hong Kong in the 60s and 70s, and somehow with just the headings, even she's got this incredible cursive. It's red. It's really vibrant. And then she's managed to box things. Like there's actual little boxes on the page that's the first thing. I was like, get rid of all those lines. It's too messy. And then you look at it, it's like, no, it actually guides my eyes into it. So it actually worked out really well. So getting a designer involved is definitely a worthwhile exercise. Again, depending on the venue. If it's, you know, if you're at a cafe and you know, on the corner of a suburban street, just keep it simple. You know, you don't have to do anything fancy.
What's your idea about wine lists in iPads?
I hate them.
Do you?
Yeah, I don't know. I just don't like it.
I went to a restaurant in America a few years ago where it came out in an iPad and you could click on the wine and it would take you to a page that
gave you all the info and
tasting notes, and I thought it's pretty cool. It's not my style.
I wouldn't have a job.
No, but I'm like, it was a big restaurant as well. They probably would have needed 2 or 3 somms on the floor,
and that's what that comes down
and
to.
It was a real novelty about it.
Yeah, but it's a serious touch point having that conversation.
I know. One of the things that I like, and it's happened to me so many times, and it's always in a really good restaurant, when a somm talks me out of a wine. Not talks me out of it, but says, have you had that before? Yeah, it's one of my favourites. Do you want to trust me?
Yeah.
Because you can spend $20 or $30 less and have a crack at this. I tried it today.
Yeah.
If you don't like it, it's on me.
Absolutely.
And you sit back going, fuck.
Yeah.
How good's this guy?
Ballsy. Exactly
Steakhouse last year.
Yeah.
It was so good.
We did that yesterday in one of the venues. Someone was looking for something, and I'm like, we don't have that. Or it's like, you had that. Actually, for this person, it was like, you had that yesterday. Why don't we try something else? And brought him down, not a whole rung, probably a rung.
If it's $2, people are going to think it's 200.
It's still down. You know, that's the thing. It's like, again, so my whole
doesn't
thing
happen.
is, no. Well, but there's no reason why it shouldn't.
No.
You know, and a lot of people in restaurants that are driving sales, and I'm not going to say a lot, that's a big broad statement. Some people in restaurants that are just solely focused on driving sales, they just want the biggest number they can get. But it's like, that's short-term thinking. You know, like this guy, so this was on Monday, he came in and had a bottle of wine. It was it was several $100s. Tuesday came back and did exactly the same thing, but didn't have one. He had more people with him and ended up having 3. So it's like, well, that's just...
If you gouged him the first time.
Might have been 2, sorry, I don't think he got that thirsty. But
this kind of comes back to what you were saying a few episodes ago. Like, you're like kind of born with hospitality. Like, that's being hospitable, isn't it? Like,
100%. That is real hospitality, as opposed to, I'm going to take the $1,000 off you, see you next time.
Yeah.
You know, or I'll never see you again.
I remember being a young chef sitting in Montrachet watching Terry Gallagher shave. I was waiting for Melissa to finish work, wandering around his restaurant at the end of the night with a bottle of Burgundy, just splashing glasses to all of his local regulars.
And because they were always there all the time. And it's such a...
Telling a story about how he handpicked it from this supplier and this supplier, and he had a story around it. And
surprise and delight moments.
I remember saying to him at the end of the night, I said, how much money do you spend on marketing? He goes, not a cent.
Yeah.
This is well before Facebook, Instagram.
Yeah.
And he spent all of his dough on the people that come in
the restaurant.
And he'd have the same people come in 2 or 3 times a week, every single week.
Yeah.
It was such a quintessential local neighbourhood bistro.
Bistro, exactly. And it never tried to be anything more than that.
No.
And that's why it was so successful for so long. And medium rare before that.
Yep.
I mean, you know, like, Anyway.
But that is essentially exactly what you said, Corey. It's hospitality.
Correct.
That's exactly
that's the difference.
When you come over to my house, I'm like going, $10 for a glass. I'm saying, you feel like a glass of wine? Have one of these. Oh, you had this last time. Let's have a crack at it.
Yeah.
It's exactly the same.
Exactly. And it's having the relationship with the customer. So, and again, it's using the technology. So, you know, this person now has the notes on his booking or on his profile in our booking system so that when he comes in, we know kind of what he likes, so we can have something ready before he walks in the door. So it's like, "G'day, mate, welcome back. Hey, remember that Chardonnay you had last time? I've got its cousin, you know, or whatever it might be." And
the
he's like,
vineyard
"Holy
next
shit."
door, or the
So it's like, "Oh, we got this in." And the reason why the conversation happened is our som yesterday was like, "Oh, I want to give him something else. We just got those new things in that aren't even on the wine list. Do you want to sell one of those?" And I was like, "No, I actually don't, because we've got other things that we probably need to move through first." So, but yeah, anyway, hopefully that answers that one.
Yes, it does. Interesting. Thank you. Cool. How good? Yeah, I think.
You think? You think?
Rose.
What do you
Rose's
think?
torn him up a bit down there,
Jesus,
Pete.
how much rose have you had? This bottle's still here.
I think that summarises it pretty well.
Okay.
Speaking of rosé, have you had the new vintage of the by far rosé?
No.
Such great value for money.
You're a
I'm obsessed with it, mate.
pig for that wine.
I
It's
really
just-
am, mate,
yeah.
because I'm a big fan of fucking value for money.
Yeah.
And it's like, for the price,
Yeah.
you're hard pressed to find something better than that. I was sitting on Fraser Island last week with my feet in the sand, smashing a glass of that at about 11 o'clock in the morning, and
Responsibly.
fucking hell, I was such a happy
Yeah,
person.
that's a
Kids are out in
good
the
spot.
surf, playing with the great white sharks.
Yeah, perfect. Dingoes rolling around.
I got liquored on a bottle of rosé and then jumped in there with them.
It's
Such great value for
it
money, you
is.
know what I mean? And you could basically stick a far label on just about anything and get 20% more. But
it is a solid brand, isn't
It
it?
really is.
And yeah, Nick and Philippa are now really making delicious wines.
They really are.
Illawarra as well, and
Yeah.
and by far. But yeah, I think I haven't seen it yet. Thanks, Tim. Appreciate it. Thanks for the sample. We don't get those.
come
samples, that's the
to
thing. Oh, you got
marketwinestore.com.au
great.
and we'll do a little tasting.
Yeah. Actually, it's funny you said that because I just emailed that supplier today about my allocation of yeah. It's like, did we take it all yet or not? So, but yeah, I think hopefully that helps some of those sort of questions. But,
I think they're good questions.
yeah, they're really
Yeah,
good questions.
they were really good, and I feel like that's a good place to wrap it up.
Okay, we'll do that. Consider it wrapped.
Wrap it
Till
in.
next week.
Wrap it.